Okay, welcome everybody to Thursday night session on week 6. We have a few guest speakers tonight, which is going to be very interesting for all of us, I know. We're going to get started with that here in just a minute. First topic we're going to talk about tonight is regulatory considerations. Then we're going to move into another guest speaker that's going to join us around 7 to talk about federal programs. And then I'll finish up with IP protection considerations. Over the last several weeks, we've been working through, and I hope everyone that wasn't able to join us on Tuesday night with the shift from last week, I hope everyone was able to look at the recorded session, because that was kind of the tail end of the first half of the cohort where we spent a lot of time in the last 4 weeks diving really deeply into the first half of the narrative setting for what we'll work on over the next few weeks, which will be our pitch for our pitch competition. So a lot of time spent around fully encompassing a concise problem statement, matching that up with a solution statement, making sure that we have a truly well organized and identified customer for that, understanding where those fall, building a value proposition, and then even going into some levels of go-to-market as it relates to that as well. So those 4 or 5 areas are very important to really bridge that first part of the narrative, which becomes what we've talked about, that 60-second elevator pitch, or even that 2-minute kind of spiel that you would give to start a conversation with someone that you hope to win them over, either through some sort of business development opportunity or sales opportunity or investment opportunity. And then in our context, what we're talking about here, building out a pitch for what you'll do on Pitch Event on April 27th for cash and prizes and all that glory that we're going to have at the end of this event. So I don't want to take too much time because we have some valuable time here from a guest speaker. So I'm going to move forward here and talk about these. I'm not going to actually spend any time talking about these 2 gentlemen, although I've worked with one of them fairly extensively over the last year, and a few things that we've done and a few things that I've had an opportunity to actually listen to him talk several times over one of the programs that he helps out with and runs here in Memphis, Tennessee, called 0 to 510K, which is or 0 to 510, which is a program very specifically focused around life sciences technology companies. An accelerator program that helps them gear up and get ready to go through the FDA process. So Olaf Schulz is joining us here today. He's from Memphis, Tennessee, and lives in this area or works in this area a lot, and has had a lot of great, rich experience as a startup person, but also a lot of experience on the regulatory side. And then Ryan Belaney. I haven't had an opportunity to meet you, Ryan. I'm looking forward to it. But Olaf speaks very highly of you. I've stalked you on LinkedIn. You definitely have a really rich experience, both on the business side, startup side, and the regulatory side. And I'm looking forward to both of y'all kind of giving us a rundown of what you do and your background and kind of give us an insight. We have 42 minutes for you to take and to spend as much time as you want, actually 52 minutes, sorry. So you have till the top of the hour before our next guest speaker comes in. We run these things kind of dynamically. So as people have questions, they'll come off mic and ask. But I ask everyone to just kind of hear these 2 out and then formulate your questions as we go along. The last thing I'll say is just I can hand over the co-hosting to you if you have something to show us, Ryan, and then we can kind of go from there.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll go ahead and share my screen. I would ask. Awesome.
Co-host here. Okay, you should have that now.
All right, cool. Thanks. Let me just get my slides up here. So I have a presentation. We're not going to go through all 70 slides of it, but it's really, there's quite a menu of different things that we can talk about when it comes to medical device, regulatory, even drug regulatory, and the general framework around that. But I think the most important thing, I can talk a little bit about what I've done, but the most important thing is helping Olaf and I understand how can we help you? What is the goal for you today? So I would strongly encourage you to show your screen, unmute your mic, and talk with us. Help us understand what you're doing in this program, or briefly what you're doing in this program, and how we can get the most out of this, because topics that we can talk about are how to set yourself up with your regulatory approval or regulatory pathways. Other things could be setting a strategy with the FDA, building a partnership with the FDA. I suspect what might be most interesting is talking about how to communicate your business plan. And the regulatory side of that, the market access reimbursement side of that, even the clinical side of that, if necessary. I don't think you'll be interested in the future of regulatory, but we could touch on it if necessary. But Olaf and I both, we've worked together at multiple companies, and we've both taken the entrepreneurial route with smaller startups and participating with incubators, accelerators, and different university groups. So with that, you have to be able to do all types of different things. So the reason I say that is we have background in quality, we have background in clinical, we have background in business development. At my last company in Florida, I ran the research department, but also headed up the business development. So I've been pitched a lot of different technologies. I can see holes in business plans, and I can also see well thought out business plans. So let's unmute for a second and let's talk about maybe I'll even stop sharing. Let's talk about how can I help.
Let me give you a little bit of background first, Ryan. This is a program where we take intellectual property from a variety of different research organizations in the state. So much of the intellectual property has been already created. And in fact, one of our cases, it's already ready for licensure. But most of the business side, the conceptual side of how to wrap our business around intellectual property has not been done. These have been pretty solely focused on the research side. So what we do in this program, and we've combined two programs here. We have a Scipreneur challenge, which focuses on life sciences. And then we also have a couple other intellectual properties during this cohort that are related to smart mobility and automotive. And we're going to talk in another session about DOT and some of those other things, some of the other regulatory that has something to do with them. So tonight we're kind of focusing in the space that y'all are domain expertise in around FDA. So the individuals that are on this call right now really have been getting a crash course on how to build a narrative, a concept around the technologies that they have. So these people didn't create the technology. These folks mostly are just coming to build a business concept around. The stretch goal here is to show that we can build a business concept around a research-based technology that's in one of these organizations, and then hopefully provide momentum to that after this cohort to then carry it forward. And in that case, would work more extensively with someone like yourself to really craft that narrative around an FDA execution plan and so on and so forth. So tonight, we're really hoping to get more of an overview of the FDA process and how that would impact a startup and what are the considerations early stages for a startup to think about when they're kind of thinking about that future of the FDA.
Brian, I think that's understood. What I'd like to hear from everybody, since people will ask, is what are you working on, and can you describe it in 15 to 30 seconds? And I think we can go around the room and find that out.
They should be able to do that. So let's see what they do.
Hi, I'm Angelita Crawford, and we are working to commercialize a drug, antabuse, and this drug is already cleared through the FDA, is approved. So we are just repurposing it for use in oncology. And we are using a different formulation of this drug, which includes copper, and it will be delivered through nanoparticles. So my question is, for repurposing a drug that's already cleared through the FDA, how can that improve the regulatory process for us?
Sure. Absolutely, we'll address that. Thank you for setting me up for that.
Hi, my name is Matthew Dungan. I'm on the other sort of team that's on this call. And we're sort of, our IP is focused on looking at essentially developing diagnostic tools for cancers that are drug resistant to certain chemotherapies. And this drug resistance also goes hand in hand with development of metastatic cancer. And so we're interested in more on the diagnostic side and sort of any sort of specific FDA hurdles that may be associated with diagnostic tests, not necessarily like specific medical treatments.
Just to help me better understand, is the diagnostic tool intended to determine if a drug is effective or is not effective? And can it be used for multiple? Is the idea any drug can be put into this test, and you'll have a better idea if there's if there's any effectiveness for oncology?
Yeah, so essentially it uses a specific method of that cancer. It detects whether a cancer cell is able to develop a certain type of drug pump, and there are certain chemotherapies that are susceptible to being sort of evaded through this mechanism. So there are I think there's 6 chemotherapies that are widely used that are sort of susceptible to being resistant through this process, and our technology identifies if this cancer has that pump, essentially.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Jen?
Any other teams?
Yeah, I'm on Matt's team. I just turned my video on so that you could all see me and if I had anything to contribute, but you did good job, Matt. So
yeah, and those
thank
are
you
the
for
only
that.
two. We have 2 and 2. So the other 2 teams are dealing with the automotive side of things. So those are the 2 teams of context here. So that was great.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started and start talking about the general framework for regulation in the United States. This does apply to drugs and medical device, so I think it will apply to both of these projects in more of a broad perspective, and then we can really dive into some of those specifics about each of the team's ideas that Olaf and I may be able to help with.
And just for context, a brief introduction. I know Brian sort of mentioned a little bit about what I do. Got 25 years of medical device experience, worked on drug device combination products, mostly in orthopedics, but also cardiovascular. I'm in a general surgery area with hernia, drug releasing hernia mesh right now. And we've worked at a larger scale company at Wright Medical, Ryan and I, and we worked at startups that we built from the ground up. And like Ryan said, we did regulatory, quality, manufacturing, R&D, business development. So we run the gamut, and we've seen quite a bit. And also I run 0510, which is in Memphis, the medical device specific business accelerator. So we take companies that once they're accepted, they get a certain amount of funding, and based on that funding, we help them grow and navigate through the FDA process and get ready for a product launch.
Thanks, Olaf. And I'll also add, I'm currently the Vice President of Clinical and Regulatory for Active Implants. I'm out of Memphis as well. And I'm also a consultant for a reimbursement group called the Market Access Solved, where we can apply regulatory clinical strategies along with reimbursement strategies to help out companies all over the world. Getting into our presentation. So I think I got a better feel now for what the group's experience is. And I'll briefly go through what the role of the FDA is. But the number one thing on this slide to take to heart is that FDA is responsible for pre-market review and monitoring of the brochures and the labeling and the way that you promote your product. But the number one thing here is that they are not in charge of regulating the practice of medicine. And FDA continually tries to overreach into the space of the doctor. And the practicing physician has the right to practice medicine. And an FDA can only limit themselves to the regulating the medical devices. So that's a theme that you'll hear potentially in this presentation, but throughout your project, that when you talk with the medical community, there is a clear line between FDA and the physician, and that line needs to remain. Very, very briefly on the history of regulations. Before 1976, it was really quite a different environment and wide open. You might hear the term snake oil salesperson, and you'll hear about the cure-alls. But one of the most impactful events was in 1962 when there was a drug called thalidomide that was approved or cleared in Europe, and it resulted in thousands of birth defects in children. The U.S. Started to build legislation based off of that horrible event. But in 1976, the structure that I'll be discussing the rest of the presentation is really when it came into place. In the 90s and continually, the industry, we all pay FDA to review our submissions. We pay for annual registrations, and we're paying for a large part of their salaries. In return, the FDA gives us predictable review time clocks, and we try to hold FDA to predictable reviews as well. So there's a little interaction between industry and FDA, but it's not all taxpayer dollars that pay for FDA. We subsidy about 60% of FDA's salary. As you're diving into your project idea, whatever the right word is, it's always best to learn the rules of the game and understand who you're playing against. And fortunately, the FDA website is excellent. I gotta say, they provide so much information about how to regulate your specific device. They also provide information about who the players are, who's pulling the strings at FDA, so that you know exactly who to talk to get a better understanding of your regulatory plan. And this is an example of the very top of medical of the regulatory group, Commissioner Calif right now, and the directors for devices and radiological health are listed on the website, and you can go down through this tree and you can see who the actual leaders are at FDA in charge of different products. So you see cardiovascular devices, Olaf's project likely worked through Bram's department. I'm working on orthopedics, so Captain Raquel Pete is the team that we're working with, and you can drill down even deeper and see even more of the employees at FDA. So it is, the website's fairly transparent about who the players are and what group you're going to be communicating with. There is the Code of Federal Regulations are the laws. These are the specific rules that FDA is determining approval or clearance off of. But the Code of Federal Regulations include much more than just food and drugs. In gray here, you can see that there's some things about air and space, telecommunications, Office of Drug Policy. So the Code of Federal Regulations are all federal regulations, but wedged in there are drug and medical device regulations. And the first question that someone would ask if they were developing a device or a drug is what is our approval pathway? It's much easier on the drug side because drugs are typically high risk and a little more onerous to get approved. They're typically the highest, which is a class 3 medical device. But in order to determine what your approval pathway is, you start with the classification of your device. So some of the things that we could talk about, I think I'm going to be a bit more brief, just to focus the conversation, is about classifying your device. So let me move forward a little bit. And in general, for medical devices, there's 3 classifications, and this is the same for drugs as well. But class 1 devices don't require a pre-market submission to the FDA. Rather, we internally document how we're following what's called general controls. You see good manufacturing practice, GMP, and whether it's an in vitro diagnostic or you can internally document how your device is legally marketable. And because you register with FDA, you'll be put on the list to be audited. And when you get that audit from FDA, that's when you'll pull out your internal documentation and show why you're legal to market. Class 2 and Class 3, on the other hand, those do require submissions to the FDA, and this is where industry paying user fees to allow to subsidize their salaries and to give us a more predictable process and a more predictable timeline so that we can predict or we can rather forecast and extrapolate manufacturing needs and marketing needs and all of the business requirements, that they aren't just sitting in the ether waiting for an FDA decision of some sort. I'll send this slide on to make sure, or rather the slides, I'll send the presentation on to everyone. So anything I'm skipping by, and if you're interested, feel free to digest it at your own pace. But this is one of the more important slides, along with at the end of the presentation. And that's where all of the links that are in here are. And what I would like, get back to where I was, what I would like everyone to be able to feel comfortable with is if you have a question about how to regulate your device, what submissions you need, just go to the FDA website. And the top level for medical device is called device advice. And you can see, hopefully this isn't too small, but you can see all types of questions, even like the most basic of basic. I can't promise it'll be exciting reading, but the most basic of basic questions get answered on here. And you can actually drill down. So here we go. Here's our class 1, class 2, class 3. But you can actually drill down into some very specific things just by getting comfortable with the website. So if you're working with a regulatory consultant and they tell you that they have some secret information, they're probably getting it off this website. There's no secret about regulatory affairs. There's value in experience, but you can learn a lot and you can fact check a lot of your consultants just by knowing the website and understanding where your device sits or where your drug sits. So I'll go back to the presentation here. Guess I haven't even been presenting, have I? How dare I? It's actually easier if I can move around, since we're on a limited amount of time. The links on this page include the very top level. If you have regulatory assistance, that's what we clicked into. But what if you don't know what your device is? What if you want to do some surveillance and understand what similar drugs or devices are compared to yours? So there's a lot of different databases. Olaf mentioned surgical mesh. So let's just type in mesh. And you can see that there are multiple types of meshes out there. And each unique type has its own product code. You can learn about what regulation they fall under, what device classification they are. So if you're starting from square one and trying to understand where you sit, find something similar. And chances are that classification will be the same. And the more you understand your competitors, the stronger the regulatory argument you can make. Because, and this goes to the first question about how to make the most out of my drug that's already been approved for a different use. The more assurance of safety that you can provide to the FDA, the lower the burden is on that FDA reviewer to approve that drug. So if I'll pop off the screen for a second here. So
if I can interject,
absolutely,
that the filter through which FDA looks at, and Ryan's going to get into a lot more detail, but the filter through which FDA looks at everything is it safe and effective? And you'll hear that over and over again. And so when you are considering, for example, your drug that's approved in, let's say, an oncology space, and you want to apply it to a different space, that's the question they're going to ask, and something you'll have to answer, which could be very different if you don't know. That's just the lens.
Yeah. I just want to add something too. We spent a lot of time talking last week about competitive analysis and the industry and how that's good. It establishes an industry. In this case, it really establishes also, in some cases, a safety net related to the fact that a precedent has already been done, right? You can actually refer to that information to show something's already gone through a large set of trials, a large set of things to show that yours can be, you're going to do yours better, but it also has that historical FDA information as well of how that's gone through the process too. Is that correct? I mean, this can help you get further down the road with some other data that's already been done by a competitor that if you're doing something as similar to them. I mean, isn't that also one of the cases where that comes in handy?
Absolutely. So if you were trying to clear a product made of a certain material, I don't know what type of maybe a polycarbonate, if competitors use that same material, then that is it's a step ahead on biocompatibility arguments, on any type of manufacturing. If you injection mold that polymer, does it change from a raw material perspective to the final finished form of the product? So going back to the question of how to make the most out of the drug that will be repurposed for oncological purposes, the number one thing is that if you have a good relationship with wherever you got that IP or access to that drug from, if you have access to the master file, or if you have access, or if you have an agreement where you can at least see the table of contents of that drug's master file, then you can have a better understanding for what tests have already been conducted on it. Because for drug approval, there has to be at least 2 to 3 stages of clinical testing, the full gamut of biocompatibility testing. And whether or not that applies to your use or your indication, there's still value in obtaining the rights to share that to the FDA. In my experience with FDA, there's no such thing as slipping one past them or some kind of a special strategy. I think the secret of working with FDA is communicating and being transparent. We all have the same goal. We're all trying to get helpful products to patients. And once you can establish that similar goal with the review team, then you can all get to work on answering the questions that the product may have. And previous information about a product, previous uses, can do nothing but help. So that's...
You may hear you'll talk to several regulatory experts in your product life cycle. And you may hear some people whom I'd call curmudgeons that are like, don't tell FDA everything. You want to keep a low profile. And that's like an old philosophy.
Yeah.
It's a much more collaborative environment. FDA wants to understand what you're working on because they're incentivized to finish products within a certain period of time. And if you make life difficult for them, they're going to make life difficult for you. And we've seen it over and over again, especially in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right, Olaf. The escape hatch for FDA is just to say no and kick it out. They know that if you have something with value, and it's because of a difficult, confusing submission, that you'll come back, and that's their way of getting an efficient submission out of you if it keeps getting kicked out for that reason. So let's get back into the presentation. Brian, am I on target? Anything that anywhere you want me to go with this? Just want to make sure I'm trying to make the most of the time for you.
This is better than my expectations because this is more dynamic, and I appreciate it. And just the thought that I had is the FDA doesn't look good on a recall either, right? When something damages somebody and something happens, there's a trust factor with the FDA, same as a trust factor with USDA and everything else. So they're motivated to make sure that they're doing their job, and even in extreme cases, as we saw the vaccines come through in 8 to 11 months through COVID. The FDA can rally with companies to do expedited things. When you do have things called breakthrough technologies, there are ways of getting things through, like emergent needs and emergency use. And when you have things that are very vital, that could be the difference between a fatality or not, or something that could be brought to market rather quickly. The FDA is going to work with you on those things. And please, y'all elaborate on those if you have time. If we have time, I hope you do have a few minutes. There are very specific ways where the FDA can actually work with you in special cases to bring things to market much, much quicker. And in those cases, they're also motivated to do that because it could be something very revolutionary, like the COVID vaccines, or something that means something that can change a fatality into someone who can continue on to prosper and live because of a breakthrough technology. So the FDA is motivated to work with you. I like the way y'all put that, the new way of being transparent with them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I had flashed on my screen the 3 different pathways for approval. You may or may not have heard of a 510K. That's basically for a moderate risk device, showing examples that are already approved or cleared on the market and comparing yourself to those. It's an abbreviated 90-day cycle. In total, it's probably about a 9-month process. But the highest risk devices go through PMA, pre-market approval, and those are in general they'll take a year to a year and a half of going through the review process. That's before you obtain all the data necessary. But what Brian was describing there are unique types of submissions and ways to get interesting devices to the people. The people in most need. So starting with the humanitarian exemption, if there's a unique disease or condition that you're treating, and it's typically less than 200,000 people, you can submit under that humanitarian exemption. And FDA does have compassion for those types of situations. So that's one method of getting market access for your unique device. There are also one-off approvals called compassionate use. And in fact, I'm working with a synthetic meniscus device that's still under review, but there are patients that have no other surgical option. So we do probably about a compassionate use every other month for citizens on a device that is not cleared at this moment. So compassionate use is another way to get a surgeon involved and get that that one-off approval, and you can do as many of those as you're willing to, as the number of hoops you're willing to jump through for each one of those compassionate use. Brian mentioned a couple times the breakthrough device designation. This is an exciting program that in Olaf and my world, in the orthopedic world, has become more and more common. If you're treating a life-threatening, the oncology is absolutely fits into that life-threatening, or irreversibly debilitated patient group, and your technology has the potential, so benchtop testing could be potential, animal testing could be potential, clinical data could show the potential. As long as your device shows the potential to help with that irreversible or life-threatening disease, FDA is interested in classifying or designating rather those technologies as breakthrough. And what breakthrough gets you is faster access to the FDA review teams. It also gets you top of the pile access when the submission is being reviewed. And what's becoming most important about breakthrough device is that the reimbursement world and CMS for payment are jumping on breakthrough device designations, and there may in the very near future be some automatic payer decisions on a device. So something that's an old way of thinking. We talk about our curmudgeon regulator, a regulatory expert. An old way of thinking is if I just get this product approved, we're off to the races. That's half of it. The other half of it is being able to get paid and navigating our US medical payment system is crazy. It's different from anywhere else in the world, and it's different for different regions of the country, different for different hospitals, and frankly, one of the most difficult things to understand. I don't understand it near as well as some experts, and it is hard not to let your eyes glaze over when you hear people talk about reimbursement. But my message to you all is, if you're building a pitch deck, if you're someday trying to pull together your business plan, have an answer for how you're going to get paid, because selling is one thing, but getting paid is really the ultimate when you're trying to build a business. And I see we're at. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Please. Okay. So I feel like I hear all the time about like interacting with the FDA and FDA submissions, but like I'm coming from an academic background. I'm a grad student at Vanderbilt. And so when I think of that, I think of like I send in a grant application and then I wait like 6 months to hear. Is that kind of how the FDA process works, or is it more of a dynamic, like proper like email dialogue back and forth of I want this, what about this? Have you looked at this?
I'm just finding the slide that answers your questions. So there's a process called a pre-submission, or a Q-sub. It's called. So I'm almost at it. There we go. So let me share my screen again. And what a pre-submission is free of charge. You don't have to be registered with FDA. You don't have to have a company. You just have to have an idea with questions that FDA can help with. And FDA prefers that people reach out so that it saves them time on the back end. When it's submission time, when it's time to talk about a clinical study design. So what a pre-submission is it's a formal discussion where you send in, so it's not by email, but rather you fill out a template basically, and it could be 5 pages, it could be 2 pages, it could be 20 pages, but you explain what product you're eventually trying to get approved or cleared, what you believe the patient population is, what the indication for use is, where you're at in the process. If you're preclinical and trying to understand what's the right mechanical test, just explain the question that you have. If you're designing the clinical trial, and before you submit that clinical trial, you have a couple questions about, I don't know, what the endpoint should be. How many patients would FDA consider safe? You put that down on paper, scan it, and then you email it. So I guess you do email it eventually. You send it into FDA, and within 70 to 90 days, they set up a meeting with you. This is a pre-pandemic slide because I still have face-to-face meetings. It's coming back, but FDA since 2020 has gone all Zoom, which is good and bad. Good because you can have face-to-face meetings, not that FDA ever shows their faces, but you can have face-to-face Zoom meetings in a pretty quick manner. They do it a lot faster than when it was fly to Washington and go visit them and sit in their offices. A rumor is they're coming back to face-to-face meetings around summertime. We'll see, but that's the process. And Matthew, you'll be able to get clear answers to your question. Now, here's the kicker. And this is a little disappointing, but I can understand FDA's side of this, is it's non-binding, which means if they tell you something today and you submit 3 years later, they will try to uphold what they thought. But if there's a circumstance or something different that changes their opinion, they can't be held to something they said 3 years ago. So it is an honest and open effort to help industry and to become more efficient. Olaf, any experience with pre-subs on your side?
Yeah, a lot. One of the things that is really important, and I would say it applies to life too. That's way too meta, but you want to go in with a position. You can't say, FDA, what do you think? Because essentially what they're going to do is they won't commit to anything, and then they'll pick the most conservative route possible because that's safe. What you want to do, like in an argument that you might have, is here's our position and this is why we believe this is our position. Do you think this is reasonable, or is this a path that makes sense moving forward? And then you want them to work with them on that discussion. Because if you leave it too open-ended, you're going to get hit with the most conservative, most expensive route. And that the pre-sub meeting is very, very helpful. It gives you a window into what FDA is thinking, and you'll oftentimes figure out like it is miles different than what you've been discussing internally. So I had not a recent, I guess recent, it's all relative. I don't know anymore. I had a relatively recent example where we presented something to FDA, and if you're on a tight timeline and you've got a startup, like every day is cash, right? And so to wait 75 days, that's a long time. But the insight you're going to get in that 60-minute meeting, and that's what that is, right? It's like 60 minutes on the clock, they're going to hang up on you. Is invaluable, and it'll save you 6 months. So like your investor or whomever may say like, oh, we're burning money, let's just push ahead with the submission, whatever it may be. It's invaluable to wait and have the discussion, because in my case, we had to redo some animal studies, right? And that took another 6 months. It's good to have you have to submit this as part of your packet, but here are 20 questions or 10 questions that we'd like to answer. And then you just start going down the list. And you may not get to all of them, but you can rank like the most important ones first, and you work through that. It's a strategy, right? But again, it gives insight. You may understand, like in our case, they weren't convinced by our efficacy data, and that's why we had to do an animal study. And then they didn't like one of the biocompatibility studies that we had done. They didn't like the method, so we had to do that one over. So the fact that we had waited so long for pre-submission really hurt us. And it was like, if we had done that as soon as we had anything to talk about, it would have saved us probably $1 million in 6 months, right? And then when you start talking about that number, it becomes much more tangible.
Yeah. I got an example too. We have a device. I work with a company that's got a device that we believed and are getting good indication that it could be a breakthrough device because of the market that it's trying to hit around COPD, asthma, respiratory distress across the entire board. Respiratory distress is the top 6 reasons why people go to the hospital out of the top 10. And so considering how many people get turned away at the emergency room and have to go home still having respiratory distress issues, hospital at home devices are being considered as being potential game changers in telemedicine and telemonitoring, and therefore in some cases are being considered as breakthrough devices if they are truly novel and disruptive. We are going through a process of working with an independent consultant who used to be an FDA reviewer and approver. And that was the recommendation we got, because it's not necessarily life-saving as in some of the older examples of what a breakthrough device could be, but it is life-altering, and it does mean a significant change in data that can be captured from hospital at home compared to those people being turned away with no clinical or therapeutic data being able to be captured from them because they're not in a hospital setting anymore. They're just sent home from the hospital, from the emergency room. That's where it was kind of good to go ahead and start asking the FDA, hey, this is not the novel kind of, or this is not the traditional definition of a breakthrough technology, but we believe, because we looked at CMS, we looked at a lot of the other precedents, that this could be breakthrough. What are your thoughts, right? And that because it was a gamble where we would be either a new device that could take us anywhere from a year to 3 years to get through the trials of everything we need, or abbreviate that to less than 1 year with a breakthrough device classification, it was worth us to kind of go down that path. So, that's also a reason why you might want to try it out, because you were trying for something a little bit different. Now, if you're doing for compassionate or emergency use, you might have lives on the line. You want to go directly to it. You don't want to wait 75 to 90 days because it might mean something different. For us, it was worth the game.
And it sounds like this is kind of a one-shot deal. Is that correct? Where you have to kind of, or can you do this? Like, could you say, before you kind of even get started, like have a meeting and say, this is the fundamental idea. This is where we're going at it. This is our initial first steps, and then like kind of line them up every month until we kind of get off.
Yeah, you can go to the well as many times as you like. It really is the pushback will be from your budget and maybe your CEO's patience.
Yeah.
But
unlike the National Science Foundation, you can go. Which we're going to talk about.
You'll also learn.
We're going to talk about NSF with our next guest speaker, and that's a little bit more like if you apply and don't do it well enough, you kind of shot yourself in the foot. Here, they want you to get it right. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Even if the Q-sub or the pre-sub doesn't yield the answers you want to hear, you'll now know who will be reviewing. You'll now know the team, and you can start building that relationship through these meetings. Because if they're excited, if you're excited about your product, make it known as you describe it to FDA. Because if FDA is excited about your product, that can do nothing but help you. If they can see that people can be helped from your technology, then that's part of a manufacturers association that I'm a part of meets with FDA every other or 2 times a year. Anyhow, the story goes, before the pandemic, I can remember hearing reviewers talking with themselves, and they were gushing over some Google products. And it was Google Watch was trying to get some additional, more medical type approvals. And they were so excited to be working on a Google product. And I was just sitting behind them listening, thinking, why can't I get them as excited about what I'm doing as they are for Google? But that's part of it. There's an emotional piece to this. We're all trying to help, and let's Let's all work together on this. I'm not going to share my screen anymore. I'll share the presentation. I was going to talk a little bit about what the how to communicate your plan or your project, but I think I've already hit the high points of regulatory. What is the pathway? How are you going to get to an approval? More importantly, payment. How are you going to get paid? And then also, what's the competition look like and how do you market it? But that's what you all are talking about in other sessions, I'm sure. So,
I mean, if y'all
I have a question.
If y'all have questions about payment and reimbursement, here's a great time to ask. So these are
That's my question. I want to know what is the best target market when it comes to getting paid? I mean, there's the patient, there's the physician, and then there's the payers.
yes.
So for
the answer is it depends. And I won't even pretend to tell you that I know. I say I consult for a market access team, but there are experts that focus on payment and reimbursement, and I just hear all of the acronyms. But what I can tell you, one decision that you may have to make is this a direct to consumer or a private pay situation, or is this something that insurance companies will recognize as effective and there's an economic incentive to pay for your technology for the patient? So that is like code speak. I am I know that's not a helpful answer to you. But when it comes to drugs, typically you'll have to show that your drug is effective to get approved anyhow. And then that will apply directly to whether a payer can justify whatever cost, whether that's insulin for $35 or insulin for $10,000 or whatever it was before things got capped. I don't think that helped you, but I tried.
As a Angelita, you're going to say something?
No, thank you.
As a matter of context, the studies that you do for FDA approval, whatever route you go, may not be enough for proper reimbursement through a payer. And they may say, well, you did this in a general setting. We really want to understand the population with like women over the age of 50 or like men under the age of 30 or whatever, right? And you'll get hammered on those, which is why you see, especially specifically drugs, that what FDA asks for and what the payers ask for might be very different. And that's if there's lots of very difficult questions, but how you get paid and what payers are willing to pay for is an extremely challenging question you're going to face for the next several years, however you work on this.
Okay.
Not to disincentivize you, because whatever you're working on is really important, but it's important to understand that like the road is long, and winding.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to find I'm gonna ask another colleague to maybe speak on reimbursements and pricing and a few things before the end of the cohort.
Shoot me an email, Brian, and I can put you in touch with someone in Nashville that can help out.
That'd be great. Ryan, I'll shoot you one right after this call. But yeah, go ahead and if you can pass on the name, that'd be great. And we can keep talking. Our second guest speaker hasn't joined us yet, so we can just keep going until there's other questions.
Yes, how long is this regulatory process of getting clearance?
So you're working with a drug. You're working with a drug, so that will be the highest risk drug, assuming that the approval that it already has is not in the same space as where you're going. Typically, and Olaf's already rained on your parade, so I will as well. Typically, there will be 3 rounds of clinical trials, and I'm not sure how quickly the proving the effectiveness is, but let's say in 6 months, stack those 3 studies with a 6-month endpoint on top of each other, and you're probably talking about 4 years to have the clinical data available. And then once you're ready to submit, it'll be about a 1 to 1.5 year process. So because it's a high risk, fortunately for the patient, unfortunately for us in the industry, there is a full-blown review on everything before the clinical trials. There's a full-blown review on everything manufacturing, and then there's a full-blown review on everything that involved the human clinical trials. They can be done somewhat in parallel. They can be done modularly while you're finishing your clinical trials, but in general, you're looking at a 1 to 1.5 year regulatory process once you have your safety and effectiveness data.
So for our like technology, it's in vitro
I'm intrigued by the idea of a diagnostic test, and the question in my head when you were describing it was, if you are not using that to prescribe anything, if it's not being used for medical purpose, this is kind of the loophole that an app can have, or software is a big focus right now. There's so many different medical things, but so the difference between someone with diabetes and needing a prescription to get the continuous glucose monitor on their tricep, but people can go out and buy them right now at certain companies online. Certain companies online are selling them so that they're not used for medical or diagnostic purposes, or rather for prescriptive purposes. So one angle to gather information about your test is to just offer it for informational purposes. Once you have some more data on that, then you submit it for something that a hospital or a doctor treating physician would use. So that's one of the interesting things about diagnostic tests.
Okay. Yeah. So our tests are kind of limited to essentially cancer biopsies. So I think it would be a little bit harder to not have it in a hospital setting. But it's because essentially we're taking these cancer cells and then we're subjecting them to these in vitro tests to see if they have this unique ability to pump out drugs.
So I guess my question would be, what's the risk to the patient? So the actual test itself, there's no risk. The biopsy is going to be taken no matter what. What's the risk of the result? And that's where, if the treatment regimen is determined off of that test, that's where it will require a review and approval.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also have questions that I would like to talk to you offline about 2 Class 1 medical devices. So how
okay, fantastic.
I get in contact with you?
Sure. My email's on.
I'm going to share the slides and contact information for Ryan and Olaf, if they don't mind. I don't think they do. They already offered, I think, with everyone here. So, I mean, you can reach out to them and we can have some follow-on conversations. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And,
Thanks.
Anything y'all too can help them out with fleshing out some of the last parts of their ideas to make their pitch decks more robust. They have a big pitch event on the 27th of April. So they've got a crash course on building this pitch, and they've done a great job so far building the narratives, and now they're digging into some areas that are pretty deep, and your feedback would be great.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. Olaf has a lot of experience in that. He'd be very helpful in that. Yeah, what's your time limit? How long's the pitch?
7 minutes with 7 Q&A.
All right.
So we'll send you all the details. We'll send both of you all the details about. We're doing an event live and in person, but also hybrid in Nashville, April 27th. So it will also be online as well. If you can make it, that'd be great. We'll send you all the details as well. I think we'll. Cool. If we have any other questions that are about what we talked about tonight, or if you have any follow-up questions and you think about them later, we can certainly facilitate that. I'll pass back and forth contact information. At this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and transfer into the next topic that I was going to talk about after Jim Stefansic, who was going to talk about SBIR and STTR. He was on the road tonight, so he might have gotten to a bad patch. I can kind of cover some ground with SBIR and STTR, but also have him come back next Thursday and talk for 15 minutes about that as well. Although I know, Olaf, you probably have some experience in that too. But we can thank you very much. Go ahead and say thanks to Ryan and Olaf. And here's Jim waiting in the waiting room. So it's kind of perfect timing, good segue. Guys, really appreciate y'all joining us tonight. And all the material was fantastic. I rather love the format that we did. It was much more dynamic. So I really appreciate your time. And I know everyone else did as well.
Thank you.
A good one, everyone. Yeah, feel free to reach out. Take care.
Great.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
I'll follow back up with you tomorrow. Bye. Okay, moving on to the next subject. Let's let Jim Stefansic, sorry.
Hey.
Hey, Jim, how are you? Okay, so we
just getting on. Yeah, I'm in my car. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine, Jim, and I really appreciate you doing this. It's kind of a last
minute
thing. Decided to book you in after we just talked to Olaf Schulz and Ryan Belaney about FDA things and a few other things like that. Thought, hey, let's go ahead and talk about some federal programs too. And this goes to all of what we're talking about. Jim, you've kind of been experienced on some of all the emails we have, so you kind of know what we're doing. I don't have to explain the program. So for everyone else, Jim is with the Cumberland Emergency Technology Organization out of Nashville. Or outside of Nashville. He's done a lot of great technology stuff over the years, just a really rich and robust level of experience. And he's pretty much our resident expert in the state of Tennessee on things related to SBIR and a few of the programs that are related to the National Science Foundation and a few other things, which if you don't know anything about these programs, and I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I promote these programs as being just really great programs for high-tech businesses that are looking for a way to get in front of the government, but also really more so de-risk your entire concept by getting into a program where you can get some really good funding through the several phases they have. We have great programs in Tennessee through Launch Tennessee that match those funds. And what you find is you can get through a year and a half worth of funding where you really build out your business concept with no exchange of equity. And the next thing you know, you're already a year and a half down the road with a marketing plan, a business plan, and a bunch of other things that you didn't have a year and a half before. And now the investors actually talk to you. So again, not to steal his thunder, he's got about 10 or 15 minutes he's given us to us. So I'm going to let Jim kind of give us a high-level view of the SBI programs, the National Science Foundation. So without further ado, Jim, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Good to be here. I know obviously some of the teams. I'm working with one of them right now, so I will. And so I'm obviously one of our strategies is to potentially go after this funding. I know Brian's going to give you guys the slides that I just presented last week, and I like that deck because it's kind of the 10,000 foot view. And so I've got that deck in front of me, and I'm just going to summarize a few key highlights. So as Brian mentioned, the SBIR program, it's a grant program. It's also a contract program, which is something people don't realize is that actually the majority of the money is given in contracts because the funding comes through the different government agencies that have cabinet level. And it's based on their budgets. So you can imagine the largest cabinet position, the largest budget is the Department of Defense. And in the Department of Defense, they don't really care about your ideas. They've got very specific things they're trying to solve for the warfighter or for the military. And so they solicit for contracts. Now they do have a medical. I know we've got energy and medical on here. They obviously care a lot about energy, as you can imagine. But they also care about medical. I mean, there's certain things in the field. They're trying to find solutions for soldiers and personnel, mental health. So these are some other things to consider. But that's one key point is that this is not just a grant program, but it's a contract program. And I've got a slide or two in there on that. The other thing to note is that this is it's a multi-stage program, as Brian mentioned, and it's highly competitive. When I give these workshops, the number one thing that I say when I start the workshop is my job is to convince you not to write an SBIR. And I know you're probably chuckling, but honestly, it is not for the faint of heart. It is extremely difficult. Your chance of winning, even if you write the best proposal the first time, is, less than 50%, much less than 50%. And it doesn't mean you can't win the first time. Plenty of people have. I won the first grant I ever wrote. I've seen lots of people win the first time they ever wrote a grant. But I also lost a whole bunch after that one too. So you lose a lot more than you win. And I like the program as much you're going after the funding as you're being forced to really think about what are the key technical challenges that you have to overcome. What are some key milestones to overcome those challenges? And how much is it really going to cost for you to achieve those milestones? And how long is it going to take? Now, when you ask for this grant money, you're always going to ask for every dollar you can get from the government. They want you to. They want you to ask for the not only direct costs, but indirect costs for your project to maintain your business. There's actually a profit component to these grants. You get a 7% profit. I mean, you can use that to go on vacation. You can use that money for whatever you want. But what I find is people that don't win these grants, but really put the effort in, is by the end of it, they're like, wow, I really understand technically what I have to do to get my business forward. And I don't need $300,000 to do that. I'm asking the government for it, but I could probably do this for $100,000. And if I take such a pitch to an investor, I can show them, hey, here's the specific aims or the tasks that I need to do to de-risk my technology. And here are the milestones I will achieve. Because that's what you're trying to sell to the government. Because as Brian mentioned, it's a multi-stage program. So if you get through the first phase, they call them phases, not to be confused with drugs in clinical trials. It's totally different. But a phase 1 grant for NIH is about $300,000. The phase 2 can be over $2 million. So you always want to go. The rule is if you write a phase 1 and you win, of course you're going to go for phase 2. And phase 1's kind of maybe prototyping, super de-risk stuff, super high tech challenges that you have that you can solve in a 1-year time frame for about that much money. And then the phase 2, you may have a prototype at that point. You may want to do some clinical investigations, some animal studies. There may be, the phase 2 gets more into commercialization. So you have to demonstrate to the government a commercial plan. Now, if you're working on a technology that's going to take 10 years to get to market and you have 2 SBIRs, a phase 1 and a phase 2, that may only last you 3.5 years max. So they understand that there may be other more money and more time and effort you're going to need. The idea being that you've de-risked the technology, you're going to have more investors available. And actually, this program has become very good at aligning with what investors want to see in technologies and making those introductions and really just putting your name on the map. When we got our first grant, it really was able to allow us to move forward with investors. They became much more interested in our technology. So I think what Brian, I can see the screen. I think what Brian just popped up is he popped up the NSF program. So I've mostly talked about NIH, but the NSF program, the difference in that program is the phase 2 grant is smaller. It's only $1 million instead of $2 million. NSF, the nice thing about NSF is that it's become kind of the go-to organization for pretty much any technology except for drug development and drugs. That's what they say. They don't do drugs. And also the NSF program has also gives you the most support around commercialization. The effort and the resources that they provide phase 1 winners is astounding. You get to go to a boot camp, a beat the odds boot camp. You get to go to they give you consultants to help write your business plan for your phase 2. They really want you to succeed. So that's the big advantage of NSF. They want you to, you basically do like an I-Core program, which is, those of you that have heard of that, it's really a customer discovery. You really dig into what does the customer want? And I'm sure you guys have talked about that. The disadvantage with NSF, as I'm learning right now with some companies I've worked with and through my experiences, is that they are taking a freaking long time to review these grants. I mean, like, I can't believe that companies that submitted in October have not heard yet anything, not even a peep, if their grants even been reviewed. NIH, much larger organization, much larger budget, many more program managers, much more organized review process. However, once you win the grant, it's nowhere near as good the additional resources you get to grow your business. You're kind of left on your own. Doesn't mean you can't be very successful with NIH, but NIH has so basically, if you win with NSF, they're going to roll out the red carpet for you. So those of you in energy projects, they do fund those. Obviously, there's also the Department of Energy, which has a small SBIR program, a few solicitations. Still, obviously, you still get the same kind of dollars as you would in both other programs, but their program's not as known as being as helpful as NSF. If I were to choose, I'd pick NSF over DOE if you think your application can get in. But then that leads to one other point, is the timing. So if you got all the time in the world, you can apply for these grants. If by the time you get these grants and start working on it, your technology is going to be obsolete, well, you might want to think twice about that. And I've got some slides in there on that. So I'm trying to think, I'm looking through my slides here to see if there's anything else. You guys will obviously have a copy of this. So one other thing to mention is, for those of you, and this is actually very relevant to what you all are doing, if you're working with a university, you always hear about the SBIR program. There's actually something called the STTR program, where the TT stands for technology transfer. So the STTR program is essentially the same as the SBIR, except the funding is a lot smaller, which shouldn't discourage you. It's a very, very small part of these agencies' budgets. It's 0.45% versus 3.2% for SBIR. So we're talking millions and millions of dollars. But the idea is that there's a technology that you want to transfer out of an institution, and it may be critical for you to give the majority of the money, especially in phase 1, to that academic institution so that they can help you to transfer the technology out. So if they have a resource or a system or a process or something that you as a small business, there's no way you could build that, right? You can't build a nuclear reactor in your backyard or in your garage with your business, but you can take advantage of something that ORNL might have, that Oak Ridge, for those of you who don't know what that was, that they have that you may want to transfer out. So don't dismiss the STTR program because it's so much smaller. It is a critical piece, and many STTR grants have been won with partnerships with Vanderbilt. I've seen many have won. As a matter of fact, because the faculty can be more engaged, they like to go after the STTRs more than a traditional small business. You don't have to partner with the small business, though. You don't have to have a PhD as the principal investigator. You do have to be capable of leading the technical work. You have to demonstrate that, and that's obviously a huge part of the grant is your team. And all of these things, I've just given you the really the 100,000-foot view. But if you go through the slides, and you have any questions, feel free to email me. Brian's got my contact information. I know my team out of Auburn, War Eagle. Here we go. That's part of the strategy that we're working on is, should we pursue an SBIR? All right, we got it. We got it represented. I like it. Should we pursue an SBIR potentially, or an STTR with this technology? Because that's kind of our model at CET, is to go after some of this federal funding. So I will stop there, and let me know if there's you guys got any questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, Jim, I appreciate it. I think that's a good high level. And I think when the teams, if they have some more in-depth conversations or questions about this, you'd be a great resource for me to plug them into. And I think we have any interest after this, which hopefully we will after the program, of carrying this forward. These are very important considerations for them to have, when they're looking at, especially even potentially with STTR, of understanding what the assets they have at the resource locations, the RNLs and the Mandy's and everything else, and how that can be partially funded, but also the SBIR parts of it, from both the NSF to the NIH, depending on where they're going. And I agree with you. I went through phase 2 and phase 1 last year with another organization, just as an industry mentor. And you're right, they give a ton of, it's awfully difficult to get in, but once you get in, they give you so many resources. And they really are very, very motivated. I liken them, especially in NSF, I liken them to like a VC firm where they're motivated.
Oh, yeah. They really are.
Yeah, the practice director is like your VC, your venture capitalist. That person, if they choose you, and meaning you've gone through an entire process of where you've gotten a successful application, and I'd say the statistics are anywhere from 40 to 50%. Our success rate is probably high. Usually it's 50 to 60% of people fail.
Oh, yeah.
And even the consultants that do this on a regular basis hit about 40 to 45% success rate. But when you get through that, and there's a process to do that, and you can work with a lot of people like Jim to highlight, to get your success rate really up there. When you get in that process, and that practice director is the one who kind of says, yes, I want you in my practice area, they become your champion. And they will sit down, even when you're in your VC conversations, of having that validity and that bona fide of going through a government-based agency that's giving you $1.3 million or $1.07 million, whatever the number is for phase 1, phase 2, phase 2B, and you've gotten all that money. They've realized, like, the government is taking a chance on this disruptive technology at the earliest of stages. That's why Jim and I use this word de-risk, right? You've got the government saying, we like the back of the napkin concept that you've gotten. We feel like you've done enough in your application to prove out your point to us. And we feel like we can help you get through the first sets of stages to where your company is viable. It's not, or even investable, dare say, right? And then at that point, they've given you money to get to that point. Organizations like Launch Tennessee have matched that money. You've gotten anywhere from $1 million to $2 million just in that, plus matching without giving any equity, which I keep saying that because it's not just the fact that you're not giving any ownership up. What the investor is looking at is like, you haven't diluted the cap table, right? The cap table that you have is still intact from day one without having to give up anything, which is what they're going to want to do. They're going to want to take some of that cap table for their investment into you. So you've really done a lion's share of de-risking for them. And they look at this as a much more solid investment, especially now they're kind of looking at it as with the government backing and stuff like that. So it's a really great program. It's, again, not easy to get through, but once you get into the process and work with people like Jim and some other colleagues that we have, it can be very, very beneficial to your company.
You got it. Yeah, definitely not for every technology, but for the projects that we're talking about here in this program, they should all be considering this as a potential avenue.
Yeah. So I'll pass on Jim's information to everyone as well. He's actually on. If you look at any one of your meeting invites, his email address is on there too. But I'll make sure, he already passed me his deck. I'll make sure it's in the Google Drive, as well as everyone has access to that. Of course, this session is being recorded as well, so you'll be able to refer back to it. And anybody who wasn't able to show up tonight is going to be able to see that too. Jim, thank you very much for your time. We'll be
You're welcome.
Soon. You know, Jim, I see you every couple of weeks or so these days, so I'm sure I'll see you soon. Again,
all right.
you pulling over to the side of the road.
I have a question.
Oh yeah.
Before
please.
you leave, Jim.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you recommend applying to all three of these, or do you just select the best one?
Great question. Absolutely, you have to pick one. You can't, as you can imagine, you can't take money for the same project from multiple agencies. And I think the problem with even thinking about two is that you dilute your time and your effort. And these grants are all different. They have different structures. So everybody says, well, NIH is the easiest, quote, the easiest because it's only 6 pages versus, you know, the main meat of the grant is 6 pages, whereas NSF is 12. No, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, they're all hard. They all have different foci. They all have different nomenclature they use. So you really want to pick the one that makes the most sense. And for some of them, they may have a particular, once again, if it's a contract agency or if it's a grant agency that's looking for particular proposals, because sometimes they will do that, then of course you're going to pick that one. So so there's definitely a strategy to that, but I don't recommend doing more than one at a time. I've seen people do it and they've never been successful.
Right. Great question, though. Very good question. Other questions? Well, we have Jim. Okay, well, if you think of more questions later, we can always get in touch with Jim. He's a great guy. He's always available to answer those things. Very busy these days, but very responsive in email. So we can certainly hook you up with him, and he can probably carve out some time too if need be as well. So appreciate your time again, Jim. If we have any follow-up questions, we'll reach out to you. Other than that, thank you, everyone. Give all speakers thanks, and we'll move on to our next topic. Appreciate it, Jim. Take care.
All right. Have a great night.
Yep. You too. Okay, so that was Jim Stefansic, and we're going to move on to our next topic. Hopefully y'all got a lot of good information from those guest speakers. Those are some very good, trusted colleagues of mine that I work quite extensively with in this space. These are all individuals that they're similar to me. We've had, you know, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we follow a lot of different threads of intellect, and a lot of times we get ourselves into working on both sides of the fence, where we're reviewers for things like NSF or ICOR. I've been an ICOR instructor before. I've worked a lot with NSF. I've been an industry mentor for companies, so I've actually had firsthand experience going through some of these programs before, as well as being a medical device and life sciences founder in other companies and an advisor to life science companies. I'm working with companies doing FDA, pre-FDA type work right now and have had experience with that. Not nearly as much as Ryan and Olaf, so that's why I like to bring other individuals that have a lot more experience. In that regard, I've had a lot of different industries in my background. Olaf and Ryan have had very specific life sciences for all of their backgrounds, so it's really great to bring those individuals in. Same with Jim. So really appreciate their time, and hopefully you got a lot out of it. Again, it's all recorded, so if you want to refer back to it, it's very valuable information. The only other thing I wanted to add tonight was intellectual property protection, because I think it's a good thing to kind of cover some ground in that regard. It's always good information to have, especially if you're going to stay in this high-tech space. It's a good understanding to understand what you already have in some cases with the patents that are already wrapped around some of these intellectual properties. So we're going to go through that tonight. It's not going to take us a long time, but it is good and valuable information. And then we'll go through homework, which is basically the same homework that we talked about Tuesday night. I'm just giving you another week to do that because we were able to get these guest speakers in this evening. Starting after this week, we're going to really dive deep into setting the pitch and doing the narration. We are going to go over some of the material more as we dive into the pitching part of it, but we're really going to start structuring our deck more for the next several weeks as we're leading into the April 27th pitch event, which I'll be sending more details out next week. So without further ado, let's just jump into IP protection. Okay, so what is intellectual property? Intellectual property is everything that you would have that is the important pieces that is unique to your business. That is your business inventions, could be your customer lists, that could be your secret recipes, anything artistic, it could be your trademarks and your designs, it could be copyrights, It could be anything that is very important to your business that if it were to get out into someone else's hands could mean a unique disadvantage to you and a unique advantage to them because they have that information or they have access to information. This could be lines of code. It could be anything. Like I said earlier, it could be a customer list or a client list even. It could be even the way you paint your vehicles is an area to protect your brand. So intellectual property is not just about, the source code or the chemical equation or a chemical makeup of a certain substance that you're dealing with, or the PCB that you're developing, the board that you're developing, and all the components that are on that board, all the technologies, or maybe it's AI or some new cutting edge technology. It's not just that. It can be anything that's wrapped around that. And intellectual property protection is a legal measure that you employ to safeguard those. There's lots of different things that we utilize to safeguard and protect our intellectual property. And what we like to talk about, and the way we kind of refer to those, is building a protective moat around your business. So last week, when we talked about unfair advantages or unique things against our competition, these are really what they are. These are these unfair advantages that give you a leg up over your competition. So if you are going into this space and you have something that you're doing differently than anyone else, whether that's a diagnostic test to understand completely how someone needs a certain type of drug in order to fight a certain type of cancer, or it's delivery of a cancer treatment in a new novel way, or if it's a tracking of counterfeit or of products in the supply chain, or anything we're talking about here, we're talking about technology that has to be protected. You're also talking about, like I said, the business itself. So if you have a brand name that's very unique and stylized uniquely around your business, you want to protect that as well. So there's all sorts of things that we are going to talk about related to intellectual property protection. They're all pretty straightforward and somewhat interesting. So we'll go through that in the next few minutes. All right, so let's break these down. So most of these you'll know some pretty good examples. Trademarks being probably the easiest to understand, and the ones we see almost every flipping day, right? Legal protection for words, phrases, symbols, logos, designs used to identify and distinguish a source of goods or services. These are Pepsi, and you'll see the little TMs beside things, or the little R registration marks. These, and there are different types of trademarks. You can trademark just the word Pepsi or PepsiCo, or the words Coca-Cola. You can also trademark the design of Coca-Cola. So not just the words Coca-Cola, which is trademarked because it's Coca-Cola, not Coca-Cola, but also the way it's kind of scripted is also a trademark, a design trademark. And also the swooping thing, also like with Nike with the swoosh, those are design trademarks. So really, when you look at a total logo for Coca-Cola with the red background, which is Coke red, with the words Coca-Cola in its design format, with the wave underneath it, that's actually 4 levels of trademark. It's the trademark of the red, the trademark of the scripting of the Coca-Cola, it's the word or the typeface of Coca-Cola, and it's the swoosh that's below that, or the wave of Coca-Cola. So in that essence, that whole brand, that whole thing is trademarked in a lot of different ways. And you have to think along that line when you're a large business, because you can imagine other people are trying to come in and take things away from you. There are very, very specific things around trademarking. Like John Deere has a lot of trademark around their green and their gold. They're the only people that can use those green and golds. Tiffany blue is a very specific blue to Tiffany. University of Miami green and orange are very specific oranges for those universities. I love my alma mater orange. This is not the correct orange, but this is a copyrighted of Auburn's orange. So these are all different things that you can really lock in through a trademark. And we see examples of those every day. You're wearing them on your clothing. You see them on your technology, your cars, anything you're doing that has a trademark or some sort of registration. And that's pretty much the quickest, easiest, smallest ways to do that. You go to the USPTO, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, to register those, and there's a lot of different variations of trademarks. They're pretty easy and sometimes fairly inexpensive to get, and they're also pretty easy to miss out on and someone else can go get for you. And in some cases, you can have 2 people with the same things as long as you're not competing in the same space with the same products in the same geographic location. So if I have a company named Flow, and then someone else has a company named Flow in Australia, there's no big deal. No one cares. I can have my brand protected here, and they can have their brand protected here. Now, if I have the same type of company with the same branding, and I have the same customers that I'm going out, and somebody else has the same things, it doesn't matter where they are, if one of us goes after the other for trademark infringement, one of us is going to win, one of us is going to lose, right? So it really comes down to how you slice it and what you're really doing competition again. If it's two different businesses with the same name, but they're completely different, doing different different competitive markets, not competing with each other, then it's probably going to be fine. Okay. All right. Okay. So copyrights, these are a little bit different. These are how you create things. These are original works of authorship, such as painting, pictures. We've seen a lot around digital renderings and art lately. In the blockchain world with NFTs. I mean, these are all part of copyrights, books, music, software, movies. Coding definitely needs to be copywriting. You know, so if you're going to write 1 million lines of code, you copyright that code, which usually means you copyright the first set of lines of code and the last set of lines of code, and everything in between is also copyrighted. When someone takes a picture, it doesn't matter what device that picture is taken on. It depends on who took the picture. There was a fairly famous case, there was a study actually from the Academy Awards, I believe it was, just a few years ago, where this is a silly example, but it's a great example, where Bradley Cooper utilized Elaine DeGeneres' phone to take a group picture at this event. And the discussion was, who owned that picture? Well, Bradley Cooper did, because he's the one who pushed the button to take the picture. He's the one who framed it. He's the one who took it at that specific time. And so he was the one with the artistic eye, if you will, to take that picture. So he's the one who captured the moment, and therefore the copyright belongs to him because he created that image, right? It doesn't matter what device it did. It doesn't matter if it was taken on someone else's camera. The actual capture of the artistic value of the thing that it is was done by a specific person, and that specific person owns the copyright. So it's authorship. I think that's probably the most important word, is authorship. And who owns that, right? So that's how the copyright works. All right, patents are something that we all hear about, and there's very specific types. Patents run for 20 years in general. So when you get a patent, then you have that protection for 20 years. There's a process there. You go and apply for that patent. Doesn't mean you have the patent. It means you're just in the starts of that. When you go apply for that patent, if you're the first one to file, then you're the first one in there and you have first claim. It does not matter if someone invented that same thing first. And it doesn't matter if they come to the USPTO and say, I invented this 10 years ago. It is my patent. That is not how the rules go. The rules are changed a handful of years ago to be first to file, not first to invent. So let me say that again. So if I have invented a revolutionary product and it's been sitting on my shelf for 10 years and I've done nothing with it, including not filing it for patent, and then someone else next door goes and patents and files for a patent on that same thing, they will own the patent and not me, because they were the first to file, not the first to invent. I know that sounds crazy, but the idea there is like, they don't want patent trolls just sitting on this technology, just waiting for somebody else to go patent it and do all the work and build it all out, and then me coming back and saying, ha, I've got proof that I invented that before you. Now give me all your money. That's just not the way it works, right? Generally, it's going to go towards the ones who spends the time to actually build it, do the patent work, defend the patent, and build out the product, so on and so forth. Now, you can get a patent and never build out the product. Don't get me wrong. You can troll it away all day long. People do it all day long. There's entire companies that sue people every day for patent infringement. So it does happen, but it can't be on first to file, first to invent. That just doesn't work. So of these patent types, there's utility patents, which is the most common, covering new and useful processes or machines, articles manufactured, or improvements of existing products. There's also design patents, protects the ornamental design or appearance. This is where the John Deere, they have a patent on their design. So that traditional classical green and yellow John Deere tractor, that's a design patent. So then also the plant patents protect a variety of asexually reduced plants. We do a lot of ag talk in this. We usually have something from agriculture related life sciences in this program. So we always put this in there because it's got its own distinct patent type around plants in that world. So these are the three types, utility being the most important. Now, patents are not always the right answer, because what happens is when you go and file for a patent, you do have a period of time that can be up to 18 months where you publish that patent, so people can come and say, and as well as the patent office can say, hey, This is an open publication period where we're asking for people to basically tell us if there's anything out there that would infringe or this is infringing upon, right? So it's an open period. So if you're in your earliest stages and there's other patents out there, now it's in the patent approval process, but if it falls through, someone else can go take what you've done and make modifications to it. And if you're not on your game, they can go file, and now they have a new file date when you've gotten rejected, and now they're in the queue before you on the new changes, right? So sometimes it can be getting your way, and sometimes it's the perfect thing for you. So I caution you when you walk through this to work with a very good patent attorney to help you advise you on, or to advise you on the right way of doing things. It helps to have a patent attorney there because defending these things and working with the individuals, similar way that NSF and NIH and FDA and everything we've talked about, you have an attorney on the USPTO office that's assigned to your case, and they are specifically there to spend time looking at all of the thousands of other patents out there since the dawn of time to see if there's anything that is similar or same to what you're trying to patent. And if there is, then they're going to reject it. If there's not, and there's nothing in yours that is any kind of infringement or anything else, then they'll approve it. But that takes a period of time for both of them to review it. And if there's anything that they want to reject on, they'll tell you and they'll give you time to remedy it. So there's a back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And usually it's not very smooth. It's also not very laborious, but it is something that takes time. You have to go back and forth. So you really want an attorney to be on top of that. So I generally recommend that. Can you do it yourself? Yes. Does it take time? Yes. Can it be difficult? Yes. Do you need to know what you're doing? Yes. Is it helpful to have an advisor? Yes. Does it cost money? Yes. It will cost you anywhere from $3,000 to just do the initial research if you're going to hire an attorney. Most of the research you can do yourself. Google has published every patent that's out there, or you can go to USPTO site and uspto.gov and look it up yourself. It's all publicly available. Anything that's been in the publication stage, anything that's pending, or anything that's approved, anything that's in the filing stage pre-publication is not. You won't be able to see those, but anything that's in publication or beyond, you will be able to see. So you can do a lot of your research. You can also get, there's some good services out there that help you write your patents. And some of them are free, some of them are not. So you can utilize a lot of tools out there to do that. But all in all, a good patent for a high technology could cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000 to file when it's all said and done. And the reason it could be very expensive is because the US is not the only place you might want to file a patent for. If you have a good technology that might want to go internationally, it's highly recommended, which I've just done for a couple of my companies, is to get patents in Europe, patents in Mexico, and patents in Canada at a minimum. Also patents in China, because you want to protect yourself from that area, patents in India, and patents in a few other areas that you might want to make sure that you have a competitive moat, a level of protection. And I'll be very frank, there are countries out there that specialize in stealing intellectual property, India being one of them, about 70% of the time. So what you want to do, and I'm not saying anything against that. You can go look at the statistics yourself. There's a lot of technology, especially software, that gets repurposed in the Indian economy. So a lot of times it happens unless it's protected, right? If it's not protected, it's kind of free game. So, what are you going to say? It's shame on you for not protecting it more than anything else. So the idea is to get protections. So therefore, the idea is to make sure that you understand that the U.S. patents are good for your patents in the United States, but those don't necessarily convey your protection everywhere. So you have to do your research and make sure you're protecting yourself in every continent, every zone around the world. I don't think it makes sense to do everywhere in the world. I choose to do things in the biggest markets, at least first, to make sure that when I go to those markets, I'm protected. Or as I'm adding patents to my overall inventory for when I want to sell my company to somebody else, I have an inventory catalog of patents. So if I have intellectual property and it's well protected in the United States, and I can also say it's protected in Canada, Mexico, China, and Europe, then I know that whoever is acquiring my company is going to be rest assured that they have protections globally, or at least in the major markets around the world. So the patents are not just for the United States. You need to look in this from an international lens as well. Okay, trade secrets. This is different. This is something where you actually don't have to tell anybody. This is kind of a black box kind of thing, but it's a level of protection where you can say these formulas or recipes or customer lists or anything that provides you true competitive advantage is kind of black box and protected, and you will tell no one about It's very protective. It's trade secrets. You will tell no one about it. You will share no one with about it. It was kind of like everything is inside this black box of sorts. And you only allow people to kind of utilize from the outside, not from the inside, right? So you build gateways, if you will, for people to access the outside that never see what's on the inside, and benefit from the extension of, but not the inside of it. So these are special recipes when it doesn't have to be just around food, but it can also be chemistry, right? It can be part of your core technology. It can be, how you're doing things at its most fundamental level that you keep as a trade secret. This is interesting because what it is not published, right? It's not a patent. It has no timeline. You can keep a trade secret if you're good at it and you have the right protections. You have the right lawyers to go sue anybody that, would walk away with and provide trade secrets to someone else. You can, protect something forever, but that's also the problem. If I have a sales force, or if I have a chef, or I have a chemist who has the trade secret, it's really not something that I can protect when that person leaves. So I have to have the ability to pursue legal actions against that person if they were to do anything through either gag orders or some other thing, make sure that they don't convey our trade secrets to someone else, right? So legal protections take on a different definition when it comes to protecting yourselves with trade secrets, but it also allows you to keep them very, very hush-hush and not put it out in the public eye. So in some cases, you may want to not do a patent and do a trade secret instead, especially if you want to have a long-term competitive advantage, because remember, patents only last for 20 years. And then the last one we won't spend a lot of time on, but is plant variety protection, similar to what we did with the patents too. Legal protection for new varieties of plants that reproduce sexually, such as seeds, cuttings, and bulbs. Again, we do a lot with agriculture and this stuff and some other of our cohorts, so we brought this in here for that as well. But these are the areas that are most important to talk about when it comes to intellectual property. But there is one more subject that I wanted to bring up that I think is very important, especially to talk about and kind of convey as it relates to where y'all are in your journeys of being an entrepreneur and a founder, and that's the non-disclosure agreement. This gets a lot of different, opinions about a non-disclosure agreement. This is an area of intellectual property protection, but it also can be a gatekeeper from business development. And what I mean by that is, what a non-disclosure agreement is an agreement between two or more parties that when I share an information with you, that you won't share that information with anyone else. Or a mutual non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, is when we are sharing information with each other and neither one of us are allowed to share that information, anything that you're sharing with me or me sharing with you, with anyone outside of me and you. Or if it's three of us, the three of us, or four of us, the four of us, because it can have multiple parties on an NDA. Now, that's really, really good if you're trying to protect what you're talking about. But remember, you can't talk to anyone else about it. So, for example, when a startup comes to me and I am the program facilitator for a host of resources that I can bring to you, I can't sign NDAs. That's just something that my organization won't allow me to do. But I'm also not asking for anything that's not published related to intellectual property. I don't want to know any of that, right? All I want to do is help you with your business. And most of the things about your business shouldn't be so protected that I can't help you with. Meaning that if you can't share with me your business concepts and how you run your business, then I can't go talk to other people about that business concept in order to bring resources to you. And I'll carry that forward. VCs, when they're talking to you, they want to be able to talk to other VCs. They want to be able to talk to other business partners. They want to be able to talk to other potential investors about coming in on their investment. You can't restrict them by saying, hey, you got to sign a non-disclosure agreement and you're going to have to tell me everybody you talk to before you talk to them. They're just not going to sign the NDA, especially for startups. And mostly what I'm talking about right now is early stage startups. So when you have a concept on a napkin or a canvas or even a 45-page business plan or a 20-page PowerPoint deck, but you haven't built anything yet, or you're pre-FDA or you're technology readiness level 4, you're so early stage, all you're sharing is conceptually based information, right? You're not actually in the market with proprietary information and confidential product stuff that is actually being utilized. You're still in the concept statement. And I'm not trying to trivialize it. You might have very, very specific intellectual property that you're trying to protect there. And that needs to be protected by not talking about it to the wrong people. But if you're in the early stages and you haven't done anything and you need help from people like myself or investment from VCs, and they say, I can't sign an NDA with you, understand they're saying that there's not enough there for you to sue me over protection or remedy for something when I go talk to someone else who I'm just trying to bring resources to you or investment to you. You don't have a product out in the market yet, so there's no way for you to measure the remedy you need for the losses you have just by sharing something with someone else. And odds are no one else is going to steal your idea anyway, because that's not what, we're not in the business as a VC or as an advisor of going out and looking at every startup and taking your business from that. So it's just something that doesn't necessarily happen. Now, do you need to be wary? Yes. Do you need to ask for an NDA at times because it needs to be a level of protection because you just don't trust someone? Absolutely. Should you suggest an NDA? Yes. If someone pushes back and you still need that person, if you trust them, yes, keep moving forward. Now, if you're an Apple or a company that's in the market and you have trade secrets and you have a lot of things that are already there and you can measure the loss of anything getting out, like tangibly measure, like if I lose this client list or if I lose the understanding of this trade secret, it's going to be $500,000 to our business or $500 million to our business. All day long, get NDA signed, because then you have the ability to say, I will lose this amount of money if you release that information without my consent, and I'm going to sue you for that amount of that remedy. When you can get to that point, then NDAs you sign them all day long. When I was at FedEx and when I've worked at places like Google and different things like that, I signed NDAs all day because I know they would sue me and they would have a number that I'd have to pay, or my company would have to pay in order to do that. Startups are just a little bit different. So what I'm saying is have NDAs in your pocket as a tool, but when it's somebody like my position or somebody in VCs that are trying to give you money and trying to work with you, say, look, NDAs are going to get in the way, and they tell you how and why because they restrict them from talking to other people, just understand that might actually be something that does get in your way. So we can talk about that more if you have more questions about that, but I just want to kind of lay that out there about NDAs. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they can be a blocker for what you're looking for. Okay, so dogs are starting to rile up here a little bit. Okay, so here we are at the end of week 6. I know we had 2 weeks in one here. We'll have office hours tomorrow for whoever needs it. As I said earlier, we're going to start moving into the pitch part of this next week. We have a few weeks to get that right. It usually takes us about 3 weeks to get there, and that's okay. And we're going to do it. It's going to be great. Everybody's done a good job so far of building a problem and getting to this point. What I want everybody to do before we start next week and we start digging into the pitch deck and start building that out, and I'll send you the pitch deck so you can start digesting it, is give me just a good 2-minute sales pitch on your idea, on the business concept, and make it a sales pitch. I don't want to just be, here's my problem statement, here's my solution statement, and kind of all be just in pieces and parts. Give me a nice flowing 2-minute. If it's 2.5 minutes, great. If it's 1 minute and a half, that's fine too. Just give me a nice flowing sales pitch, 2 minutes covering these areas. And the go-to-market strategy, just super high level. We're going to go to market utilizing reimbursables to the insurance secondary payer market or what have you. Just give me a stab at the go-to market. We'll dive deeper into it as we build the deck in the next few weeks. But give me a good sales pitch for your homework for next Thursday. If you want to work on it and throw me some ideas, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll start there. As I said, this will be kind of the makings of your first part of your pitch. Remember your pitch deck, it will be 7 minutes that you'll have, and you'll have 7 minutes of questions at the final event. I'll have more information, and we'll discuss the whole pitch event starting next week as well. So we'll just hold all questions related to that until next week. That's it for this evening's topics. We did a lot of ground covering tonight with FDA and regulatory. We did do a little bit on SBIR, STTR. There was a little bit, just that last part was a little bit more of awareness. We talked about intellectual property protection, also a little bit more about awareness. You won't have to include these last 2 parts in anything we do with the pitch deck. So we just giving you a little bit more information to kind of flesh out your business knowledge of what it takes to run a startup in the life sciences and high technology world. So hope you enjoyed the guest speakers. They're good colleagues of mine. I always enjoy hearing them. I always hear something slightly new that I haven't heard before. So it's always interesting and great to learn from them. If you have any questions for them, I will give you their information tonight and tomorrow. I'll pass all the information in their decks. I'm still waiting on Ryan's deck, but I'll pass that on. Again, this session was recorded. They'll be up on YouTube tonight or tomorrow. If there's any questions now for me, come off mute and go ahead and ask. Otherwise, we'll conclude for the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate everyone's time, and have a great evening, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Okay, good night.
Night.